Okay, so let's start. Welcome everybody to our 8th weekly dev call on Matchbox. If you're unfamiliar, we hold these weekly calls every week to basically update each other on the progress that has been made, on any kind of issues that you would like to discuss, to ideate, to discuss different approaches, to just hang out and see how we can help each other. Today we are going to hear a couple of things. First of all, we have Bull, who is working on a procedural on-chain generator for a worlds. He's going to give us a quick update on that. Next up, we have the Game Clock project by ayeayecaptain, which is new. And after that, we are going to have Casey, who is going to introduce us to his music tools, which is also new. Without further ado, I think we can just get going. Bull, are you ready?
Yep. Do you hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, I'll just give a super quick update. Basically, the focus of or my focus and Loitz's focus for the last couple weeks has been the finishing up the front end. So Loitz found some cool libraries on GitHub for doing some or like majorly optimizing the rendering of all the blocks. And I believe he got it to work, at least partially. And then he also found some nice UI libraries that we're going to use. And then on my end, it's pretty much been just re-implementing the procedural generation algorithm in JavaScript, which is I want to say mostly done, but there's some really annoying like floating point math bugs or sorry fixed point math bugs that I'm still trying to fix in order to get it to be like truly one to one with the Cairo implementation. Um, but yeah, that's more or less it.
Awesome. Thank you for the update. In terms of the procedural world generation in general, I think you are fairly close. At least that's my impression. You're fairly close to like some kind of first, really working version, like a first proof of concept kind of version. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we basically already had like a like a working proof of concept, except the only issue was that the blocks rendered super slowly. Um, and that's because we were calling the contract each time to fetch the blocks. And so um, as soon as we have the algorithm re-implemented fully in JavaScript, then we'll be able to we'll be able to generate the terrain, thousands of times faster. And that combined with Lotus's rendering optimizations should, make it actually usable. But the main challenges that are left are basically just figuring out the fixed point stuff, like the fixed point errors, and on Loitz's end, getting the rendering stuff to work properly, and also to do collisions, so that people can actually walk on the terrain and not just fall through it.
Awesome. That's fascinating. Are you planning on having some kind of demo that you can show off with the rendering improvements once that's ready?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. We already shared we shared like the crappier demo before. And so we'll be able to easily share the new demo as soon as it's ready, using the same, service, which is Play Canvas.
Yeah, awesome. Looking forward to that. Gonna be amazing. Thank you for giving this update. Any questions for Bull or any kind of remarks? Um, if not, then we will move on. Okay, let's move on. We are going to get an introduction to Game Clock by ayeayecaptain. Looking forward to that. Lots of interesting stuff there. Lots of synergies with on-chain gaming. ayeayecaptain, are you ready to introduce us to yourself and your project?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. And yeah, this is my first time doing this weekly call. So, really excited to be here and meeting you all. And Yeah, I will just quickly share my screen and uh, go through the entire Notion documents that have been built. Can is my screen visible?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Yeah. So a detailed proposal was first proposed by Peter and Gilty Goza, and it has been. So I just kind of went through it and understood it, and this document is basically my understanding of the document. So Yagi is a smart contract automation tool. Not like it's basically uh, not exactly a smart contract automation tool. So Yagi allows it's a keeper network which allows smart contracts to automate tasks, and the idea over here is to build a tool which is a higher order of Yagi, and it makes it automation for those smart contracts much easier. So just just as an example, like after this game clock is built, someone can go ahead and write this function to schedule a smart contract, which is contract address, target, selector, call data starts, interval count. So yeah, that's about it. Yeah, there are a bunch of applications such as payouts at specific intervals to winners of the game if balance happens to be less than. So the idea is that if there's a smart contract function that needs to be called every hour in a game, that could be made very simple using this. I can go into the details of how it's going to work if that's what's uh, like. Uh, Hello.
Yes, we would love to see it. Yes, for sure.
Okay, so yeah, so the idea is to implement some sort of priority queue. So let's say that there are multiple tasks which are coming in, and all of these tasks are to be basically these are automation requests on Yagi. So the idea is that how do we basically maintain a priority queue which would allow these tasks to be automated. Um, so one of the ways that has been suggested is using a data structure AVL trees. Yeah. So this is using an on-chain AVL binary tree to store and dispatch schedule tasks. That's one of the ways. Again, I'm exploring different data structures to kind of understand if there is a way, if there's a better data structure to make to create a priority queue in this, and that's it. The second, yeah, that's it. And yeah, I've broken this into multiple milestones, and that could be found in this document. Right now, I'm still working on the first milestone, and exploring Cairo is pretty much thanks to the hackathon. I pretty much got good hang of it. Next, I'm basically building the AVL. I'm trying to understand which data structure is the best, but I would most certainly implement an AVL tree data structure in Cairo. Maybe I'm also exploring maybe something using like a linked list, or circular linked list or something like that. It could be a better option as compared to AVL tree, maybe. But I'm still exploring on that part, and something I would like to have something more definitive in next meeting. Yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction. In general terms, would it be correct to describe your project as a gaming-specific automation tool that is basically built on top of Yagify?
Yeah, like it is. It's not necessary that it has to be used in a game. It can be used anywhere. But yeah, games would mostly benefit from this because that's something like most games would need this something like this. So yeah.
Awesome. Do you have so I'm understanding that you're like trying to get your hands on Cairo right now, which is like perfectly fine and what we're all here for. Do you have like any kind of estimate in terms of when you are going to like ship the first kind of lines of code, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so like by the end of the next week, I will have an implementation of AVL tree in Cairo. But although that would be something that would be used in the project itself, what I'm trying like that would still not be the first line of code for the project. That would be just so the tasks would be in an AVL tree, and so I would have to the first line of code would be written with milestone 2, but milestone 1 would be completed by end of next week.
That's awesome. Thank you. Do we have any questions, any remarks about the Game Clock project?
Yeah, I have one question. Maybe you don't know this yet, but I was just wondering if you have any like even rough estimates for cost of using this I guess like keeper.
So right now there is no cost, like there's no gas fees, but I think eventually there would be some costs, and uh, yeah, I mean they would have to be. I think this is more of a question that Petri can answer because I'm just using the Keeper network that's been built by Yagi. So yeah.
Gotcha, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? We'd be happy to hear them. Don't be shy. Okay, if there are no other questions, then we can move on to music tools by Casey. I'm very excited to hear all about that. Casey, are you ready?
Yep. And let me just share my screen. Okay, cool. Hope you guys can see all this. Really great to meet all of you guys. I'm really excited to be working on this project. And while you're listening to this, kind of have your red pen because there's a lot of things as, some of you guys are making games and doing different things that, really tie into kind of the core requirements that this project is going to need. So my background is, I more from a music kind of background, although I've been doing coding and, writing auto harmonization code for my bands and using those harmonies and in songs and that kind of thing. And so my initial kind of orientation was, the kind of musical potential of StarkNet and kind of musician resources and that sort of thing. But, that sort of uh, one of the best ways that I think that that can happen is, through gaming. And, before all of that sort of kind of music stuff can happen, I think that like a game audio engine and kind of a framework around that is going to be a necessary precursor. And so I guess let's get into it of what like a game audio engine would be for on-chain games, using StarkNet, and that's permissionless. Some tools that would aid in rapid game development, and kind of more specifically how that would happen is creating some tools to allow game states, on chains to interact with audio engines like we see in Unreal and the likes of that. And to also limit dependency on the game's technology stack, and that's going to be where things get real interesting. It would be really great to just limit that to on-chain contracts, state indexes that we have access to, and UI behavior specs, and that's one thing that I'm looking for your guys' insights on, and we'll circle back to that. Um, but also to create some StarkNet contracts that allow the definition of relationships between the game state and audio that can be interpreted by various audio generators. And I'm not sure if everybody's backgrounds, but there's Max MSP, there's Super Collider, and then there's the ability to kind of rolling up your own. And so ideally, we could have something that allows all of these different kind of audio generators to participate, and also enable a means for musicians to participate in game audio composition. And on the Notion site, there's way kind of deeper description into the kind of musical sort of ideas. But for the game audio engine, I wanted to talk about kind of some of the requirements, that are what would be needed to sort of capture all of the audio events that we're sort of used to experiencing from console games to the sort of modern kind of multi-agent games that we're seeing nowadays. And so what that's going to consist of is there's a on-chain events in behavior, transactions, winning, losing, combat, but then there's also going to be off-chain client side audio events. Right now I don't think like Dope Wars is tracking every kind of user's position at every like movement that they're going. And that's can we find ways, there's like menu navigation, scene changes where we're used to audio cues changing or evolving or being triggered. And can we, synchronously kind of interleave on and off chain events, into a way that audio engines can understand. Um, we're also used to game audio events having arbitrarily complex associations to game objects, so if there's, fire, then when you walk to it, that sound will get louder, or, sort of ambisonic encoding or localization encoding and that sort of thing, based on player movement. And there's going to be varying UI implementations for these games. We're seeing a lot of browser-based games like Dope Wars and Realms, but this might go to mobile or standalone depending on what sort of the rendering requirements or gameplay kind of requirements are. And the other sort of requirement that we're going to need is connect. I could be wrong on this. Maybe we can kind of gather this all from game states, but recognize and react wallet resources. So if you're like a hustler, for instance, and you change from heels to boots, that your footsteps walking surface, it would sound different when you're walking, based on what you're wearing. And to see if we can capture these sort of behaviors. And then comes the sort of the syncing requirements that we're used to, and from both on and off chain sort of streams as well, and hoping that it's trying to get it as low latency as possible, and implementing, that's a huge implementation consideration, because keeping things in sync and having really good timing is can be a challenge, for audio engines. And so just to step back, to go even further, with like, console game events, we're used to seeing scene dependent themes, like, when you go to like a different world or you warp and that level has a different sound. You've got different, of audio events from when you begin games or when users moving. Usually there was that old sort of SID chip emulation of footsteps. That when different users move, they've got different sounds. And when there's events based on kind of game state calculations like winning and losing, um that would be expressed in an audio form. And then there's also special events like one ups and stuff. And so you can kind of imagine how that sort of behavior would kind of that's what we're going for that sort of thing. But with kind of modern game examples, we've got sample banks that are being triggered by different events, surface dependent footstep sounds, and I think this is for folks that have worked in Unreal, there's these arbitrarily complex audio relationships to the game state that you can rig up. And how can we kind of encode that in a way that an audio engine can understand, and and that, we're used to sound localization and, off-chain audio, like voice, during games. And so it's a lot of different behavior to accommodate. And to get that base general sense of like, the audio cues that we're used to. And so, that gets to what are some of the components that we're going to need to do this, and how can we encapsulate that to limit sort of the dependencies on audio generating, software to interpret messages and that sort of thing. So, this sort of, components kind of, as I'm seeing it now, is Cairo contracts to enable the definition and configuration of on and off chain game state related audio events. And so we're you're in the game. There's going to be this way to uh, kind of rig up all of the sort of things that we're seeing in like an Unreal Engine, where you've got routing and you can connect to you know distance, and so you can scale factors like that, and to find a way to uh, capture those relationships. And then the other component is we're going to need an off-chain client-side clock mechanism that pulls and interprets game state indexers, wallet resources, and those configuration contracts and client UI behavior definitions to output a stream of OSC messages to an audio engine or synthesis environment. And this, I'm sure folks are going to have kind of some thoughts on this because as they're building out UI behavior. One of the things that we'll get to this a little bit, but in trying to minimize latency, there's a couple strategies we can do that are potentially available to us to, limit, needing to pass stuff from a browser or from into, uh, you know, into our apps. So I guess another component will be the creation of sort of audio engines that can receive these OSC messages, and so we have like a proof of concept to say, hey, we're able to digest all of that information about the state and behavior, and then make some sound. And so have a audio engine that can take these OSC messages and output, say, like an 8-bit style kind of SID chip emulator score, or take audio samples and localize them based on user resources. And these would be some, I feel like, some good base examples to get to demonstrate that the whole kind of pipeline is working, and is robust enough to actually kind of happen. So the other thing that I, eventually would be great to add in is library of musical operations for composing, at the contract level. And that can be a way where musicians can sort of, incorporate resources that they create on chain. Um, so, in general, like some of the stuff that we're going to be dealing with are, we've got to store music in some way in, contracts, and that will be in some sort of MIDI spec. And so there's going to have to be some, you know, building out around there. The object resource audio associations. So this is kind of more contract code, the event definitions when you want this sound to play. You want this sound to play because you win, or the player loses, and that kind of stuff. And then the UI behavior. This is kind of a um, uh, I'm interested to see how this is defined, and because it would be great to sort of have this UI behavior um, kind of defined at the contract layer, ideally, because it would limit the sort of points of contact with the app. But again, you just might have to interact with the UI as well, and I'll be interested to hear ideas about that. So, if it's convoluted, hopefully this convoluted diagram will help. But to just show the general kind of flow of how things would go, you've got a user and a wallet, and you've got a game that's interacting with. It's updating the state, into a way that we can later digest, and we've got these sort of audio event configuration contracts, and potentially some musical scores that can interact with that as well. And then we've got our sort of client side clock mechanism that pulls and listens to the game state, indexers, like for like Biblioteca, for Realms. They've got this endpoint that you can access the kind of the loot realm state. And then you've also got to get all of these off-chain events like keystrokes, or menu navigation and that sort of stuff that we associate with the client side. And this has to be kind of interpreted to OS messages, ideally OSC. And then you've got your various audio generator that receives the OSC messages and sends audio back out to the user. And so that's the general kind of thing. And to see how like kind of musicians might be incorporated into that, down here you've got musicians, producers, and devs, and they can be making samples and presets for audio generators. And you've got there's sort of musical resources in the form of like either models of their that are generative models representing them, or their actual data themselves. And so some implementation considerations. This stuff is going to get hashed out because I'm sure standards are getting developed right now, and on how to access game states, and even how the UIs are being developed, etc. So I'm really interested to hear from game makers who are building this stuff, how they're doing it, because this basically has to accommodate their requirements. So right now, Biblioteca DAO has this indexer cache file in TypeScript. Since it's too intensive to update on every request, this will be likely our endpoint for getting all of data that we could then build audio events and that kind of thing. And a general question is, can a UI definition be made in contracts to enable reproduction of UI events in the OSC clock messenger, or will a connection to a UI need to be made? And I guess some of the things that I'm thinking of is, let's say you have a game and you're changing the using the arrows on your keypad. Would it be better for that like say browser UI to be sending that to this clock mechanism, or would it be better for the audio engine to just be reading key states based on like a given specification for that game? Obviously I'm worried about timing with this stuff, because the ear is really going to feel that latency build up, or when it's out of sync. And so better performing solutions might have more friction and might be less interoperable. And so that's something to think about. And also the goal is to be kind of audio engine agnostic, and can we generalize a sort of gaming spec to feed like a SID chip style game versus like, ambisonically encoded, audio to localize sound and that kind of thing. And so I guess the next steps for me is calling game states. And yesterday I was trying to basically building a tap into Biblioteca DAO's indexer, and they've been really responsive on getting me teed up with that. And so I want to kind of build, even if it's very brittle, the most basic set of connections to demonstrate this kind of behavior. And so the idea is I'll call that that indexer and some contracts from a Node.js app, and then embed that into MaxMSP for now, just as a way to quickly get sound and patches going to see how much latency there is, and that might kind of guide some of these design practices. To encapsulate the OSC messenger from the audio engine eventually, and develop these audio event spec contracts, and start to identify the best way to build kind of relationships between audio events and game state, and to communicate with devs on this, and to see kind of how they're building, because ideally this is going to be a tool to aid in rapid development, for their projects, and so it's got to play really nicely with their kind of current existing tools that they feel comfortable with. So that's kind of the long-winded kind of explanation, and it can be even more long-winded if you go to the Notion and look at kind of the music kind of side of the stuff as well. But this, I guess kind of, I wanted to spell this out because there's a lot of open-ended questions about how standards are being developed with games, and so I'd really like to hear from the people making games about what their re- kind of technical requirements are, and how audio can fit into that, because I think we all have an idea of what the behavior needs to be, and so it's kind of working our way back to find sort of the most robust solution to that. So that's kind of my spiel here, and yeah, would love to hear any questions, or just hey, I'm doing this, or hey, that's not going to work, or that kind of a thing. So holler if you have any comments or questions.
Thank you so much for this awesome presentation. Lots of moving parts, very, very exciting and interesting stuff. If anybody has questions, please go ahead.
Well,
I
I
have
guess.
a quick
Oh,
question.
sorry.
Hey, Casey, no worries.
Hey.
So this indexer, is this like an open source thing, or is this specific to Loot Realms?
Well, I think it's the initial idea was kind of from that RYO spec from Dope Wars, but right now they've in a link. I just was watching like their kind of dev call bibliotecas, and in my Notion I linked to like in the YouTube them talking about the indexer, and basically it's kind of an open kind of TypeScript kind of format of the entire loot game state, and they have basically an endpoint for that people can access, and it's sort of the first example that I can find of people kind of updating game states, and so and they're kind of dealing with the hard problems of saying, hey, we can't make a Stark Knight recall every request, so this is going to be cached, and kind of confronting the implementation details, and so I wanted to try to start there. But if anybody else has any other kind of methods or game states that I have access to, I'll work with that as well.
Yeah, it sounds like a good one. So I'm curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, and I. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, I started talking to them yesterday because I had one. I'm having a few kind of implementation questions and getting everything running, but they seem super responsive and on getting me on board and connected.
Hey, Casey, this is Terrence from Dope Wars.
Oh, hey, Terrence.
Super excited about excited about what you're building. I just wanted to let you know I'm actually currently working on an indexer that's open source, and we're implementing it with Dope Wars. So it's maybe a little bit behind the Realms because it sounds like they have an API already. So I don't think you should necessarily switch focus, but we should have something like a GraphQL endpoint that you can call to get like the Dope Wars ROIO game state soon. And I'd love to, maybe we can chat after this call just to understand exactly what your requirements are to make sure that we fill them.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I really, love to be using Dope Wars game state, because some of my initial kind of ideas were kind of, based inspired by what you guys are doing. So, yeah, would love to chat further with you on that. And it sounds like that's the same path that Realms is going, as far as like how the game state is going to be indexed and accessed. So. No, I'd love a tap to and start working with that real data. That would be great, because the the more I have access to the kind of, a better I can kind of get a general sense of the behaviors and things that I'm going to be working with. So yeah, let's chat more.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Curious if anybody is making UIs right now, and are they generally happening in the browser, or are people saying, hey, we got too much computation and rendering, so we're going standalone, or are people more interested in mobile? Like I wasn't in Amsterdam, sadly, and so can anybody give a sense of kind of where things are staying right now?
I could mention from the Dope Wars perspective. So on the Dope Wars there's two games, and one of them is this MMORPG. Both of them are in the browser, but the
Yeah,
MMORPG is focused on desktop.
yeah,
And so that that really the extent of the interaction with the Dope Wars ecosystem there is around like asset ownership. So you bring in your hustler that you own.
yeah.
And then there's like quests and stuff that the team are working on. So that's not really integrated with the StarkNet ecosystem right now, but there's no reason we couldn't like pull in, like sound generation based on whatever, like your architecture into that game. And then there's RYO, which is
Mhm.
the recreation of like the classic calculator game. And that's works both on desktop and on mobile, but it's really focused on mobile.
Gotcha.
And that it's kind of more of a text-based game, like it's like a turn-based game. So
Okay.
computationally, like from a rendering perspective, there's nothing like too challenging happening. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, like for sure, there's certain interactions that make a lot of sense to have sounds involved in, right? Like if you're getting like chased by the cops, or you make some kind of trade or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's a great place to surface these kind of the sounds.
Yeah. So I was watching Dope Wars gameplay, the browser-based one, and so you were mentioning kind of that the transactions are what's being recorded on StarkNet, but essentially like where people are on the map is going to be in their browsers, like or that state is going to be captured at the browser level.
Yeah, so there's no so the real-time information around like the location of different players inside of the map,
Hmm.
that is done, yeah, like on a centralized game service using WebSockets. So there's an endpoint you could subscribe to if you wanted to, and you would just get a
Ah,
feed of all the different player positions and when people join and leave the game and stuff like that.
okay. Yeah, yeah, that would be really helpful. Okay, that gives me a better sense of the architecture that you guys have set up. Yeah, I would love that. We should definitely chat more because that's given me a real good impression of just what it would take to have the audio for, both that side of it as well as the StarkNet side.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I'll ping you after this, and I can share some resources and connect you with this one developer leading kind of the development of that component of things, and so I can connect you with them.
Perfect, perfect.
Awesome discussion, guys. In terms of Matchbox projects, we have OGame, which is this space-themed browser game, and we also have Cairo Chess, which is on-chain chess. I'm happy to connect you to those teams. I mean, they're also on the Discord, right, with their respective channels. It would be awesome to familiarize yourself with their kind of architecture and how their games are going to work. Because like it would be amazing if we can collaborate between these working groups as well to get some space sounds and space music going in OGame, and also like implement some sounds for when a chess piece gets thrown off a board and stuff like that. So I'm happy to connect you with those guys.
Yeah, that was great. I was thinking because I was checking out O Game this weekend and thinking about chess as the swipe moves and the winning and losing and game instantiation and yeah, that would be really, really great. So let's chat more, and I'll be able to connect with them. And if any of you guys have any things that you're running into that you're thinking about uh, as with game and audio, just let me know, and I'd love to hear about it, because a lot of this stuff, I mean, it just again has to really fit what everybody's doing in their existing tech stack. And so yeah, would love to hear from you.
We also have one more grantee who's working on state management in games, which means he's working on a more efficient solution for state management. I'm not an expert in that specific area, but if that can relate in any way to what you're doing or can help you in any way, I also recommend getting in touch with him. He's called Verde on Discord, I think. So
Cool.
definitely check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was in that state management thread, and I'll reach out as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Casey, for your presentation. Looking forward to what's coming out of this.
Yeah.
If there are no more questions for you, then we can. Well, actually, we have one more spontaneous guest today. So any more questions for Casey? If there are no questions for Casey, then we can move on to our spontaneous guest. I think he's Naklecha on Discord. I'm sure I butchered your name right now.
Yep.
Uh, and you are building on-chain captchas, I think. Is that right?
Yeah. So
Would you like to introduce yourself quickly and what you're doing, that kind of stuff?
yeah. So let me share my screen as well. Um, Basically, what my full-time job currently is, I work at Morgan Stanley, but I spend most of my time working on Web3 and like learning and building stuff. So there's like a big problem that I saw in this space right now, is that a lot of products, dApps, games, like DAOs, all of them are like controlled by bots, and your dApp can easily get spammed by bots. So just for example, like you have a DAO tooling, right? And a lot of people have to vote. There's a decent chance that all your tokens are held by bots, and all the votes are performed by bots. Similarly for games, like if your game can be automated, it will, and the bots are going to like get all your tokens or anything that you're providing as in return. So I wanted to build a on-chain capture solution where the validation is done on-chain. So basically, I launched this on Polygon Mumbai because I'm more comfortable with EVM chains right now, and um, my main focus was just shipping this. So I think Polygon was the cheapest, one of the cheapest chains that I saw. So I went for that. And basically, how it works is, I can give you guys a quick summary. So like, I don't know how much time I have. You can let me know when I'm going over time. But basically, um, I'm storing 100,000 captchas on chain. So if you see, storing a list of captchas on chain, but I'm not storing the captcha value. I'm storing the SHA-256 of those captchas. So for example, you can see this captcha is currently on IPFS, and the captcha is DNZ80U5, right? So the SHA-256 of that string is what I'm storing as the file name, and also the one that I'm storing on chain. So now if you give me your wallet address, so I'm going to copy my wallet address for now. And if I call the get current hash function, so this function is basically going to determine which captcha to serve to that wallet. And how I'm doing it is very simple. Like, I take your wallet and I'm converting it to a Ewing 256, and then I'm adding the previous guesses you have done in the past, and then just modular length, right? So basically, you every single wallet gets a different captcha out of the 100,000. So that's about it. And then all you have to do is, like, if you have a project, so I just have, like, you can go through the docs offline, but just to show you an example. So this is like a normal ERC 721 um, contract. And if you're a developer, all you have to do is load in the contract and then just add this one function in your contract, captcha.check captcha, and that's about it. And if the captcha on your UI is passed on the function, you can revert the transaction if the captcha is wrong. So and that prevents spam on dApps. And this is mainly useful for games, for example. If you have a game where uh, you win a prize, right, and you want someone to claim that prize, you probably want spam protection check there because you don't want bots to automate that process. Similarly, for DAOs and NFT projects and so on, I think you guys get the idea. So that's about it. And then I also implemented like a API for it. So um, on your UI, if you don't want to go through the logic of calling these smart contract functions, you can directly call the API. So if I call this, it gives you like the image source, the hash, and so on. And you can also validate if the guess is correct. So that's about it. So I'm building this out mainly for because I saw a problem in the current space, and I'm looking to take it across chains and across projects.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for presenting. And the reason you're here is because you are potentially exploring deploying this on Starknet, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I spoke about joining Matchbox and wanted to explore some projects here. So I had some good insights there.
Very cool. Awesome. Yeah, we'd be happy to keep in touch and potentially support you with this on Starknet. That's awesome.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are at the end of this call. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for the presentations. Thank you for the great discussions and for your attention. We are going to see you next week at the next call. Thank you and bye bye.